Hello, everybody. Welcome to this conversation about the Us films at the Mill Valley Film Festival. My name is Maribel Guevara. I'm the active cinema manager, and it's my pleasure to be joined by director of the film, Kim Snyder, and stars of the film, Sam Fuentes and Alex King. Thank you again for joining us and allowing us to have this conversation with you today. And I would like to start with you, Kim, just wanting to let the audience know about your trajectory a little bit with your new film about Newtown in 2016, which earned you a Peabody Award, which I'm sure was very gratifying, but I can imagine it was a very hard film to make, and kind of you are following up with this film. And I would like to just to tell us a little bit about the process of you making these films and why are you doing this?
Right. Well, I've said this before, but Newtown was a tragic and historic moment. I really was not a person who before this was a gun reform activist. And you know, I was probably like a lot of people that was concerned about it. But I happenstantially ended up with that story, which sometimes happens to us at filmmakers, but it really ended up being a 3-year journey with that community to tell a story of collective grief, of what happens, the explosive nature of trauma in a community when such a devastation act of gun violence happens. And then we did a lot of things with that film over the next years. With a lot of different constituencies, teachers and law enforcement and emergency room workers and clergy. And I really left that film with a feeling of, what about traumatized kids? What about people who survived this? What about people who are affected for the rest of their lives? And I moved on to another project that happenstantially, I was in Tallahassee, Florida. And as fate would have it, I was filming when the Parkland shooting, the shooting happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, and was there on the steps of the Capitol with that mayor when thousands of kids just showed up, many of them on busloads from Coral Springs and Parkland, and demanding change of the governor there. And that to me was, on those steps in those first days after, the birth of something new in this space. Now, of course, it wasn't new at all. People like Alex had been doing this for years. Sam at that point was in the hospital still, and like so many people in the country, found herself in an unthinkable realm of fate that she never could have imagined, I'm sure. So I decided to take on a very, very different kind of film, which was really centered just on the voices of youth, and not a film about Parkland or a mass shooting, or even gun reform specifically, but a sort of scream, a primal scream from a generation that I saw a very authentic movement and a moment and an opportunity, horribly, coming out of something that was built on trauma, but being courageously transformed into action and hope. And so for the next 2 years, I spent time collaborating with Alex and Sam and Emma and David and some of the others, Jackie and Bria and lots of kids across the country, to tell that story. So here we are all these years later, and find now, since we premiered at Sundance in January, the world has obviously changed significantly, and I feel in a post-COVID, post-Black Lives Matter, both just sort of new historic seminal moments, that the film, in my mind, is more relevant than ever, because I feel it's bigger than guns. These kids always understood that, and it's that you can't talk about gun violence without talking about racial justice. They're intricately joined up, and you can't talk about those things without a lot of young people talking about police brutality. So I find it incredibly relevant. And certainly with COVID, we understood from the beginning, all of us agreed, I think, that this was not a film that was a partisan advocacy movie. This was a film about a public health crisis that was taking the lives of over 40,000 Americans a year, and many children among them. So now we've got this meta public health crisis. And so I see a lot of parallels, which we could talk about or not, between what we're facing in COVID and the polarization of politicizing, basically politicizing something that should not be politicized, that should be seen as a public health epidemic or crisis.
I totally agree. Sam, Alex, you watched the film in January for the first time, probably, and of course, it's been over 2 years since the tragic day in your lives. How was for you to see the film, and probably those moments you didn't even think it was gonna make it to the screen, and how has it been after watching the film in January, these months that followed, as Kim said, describing all these issues this country has been living? Where are you now, and where is the film standing in your lives?
Well, now I feel like the film is at its most importance. I feel like we need it more important. We need it more now, because one thing I got from the film is inclusiveness. How coming together really brings change. And in 2020, like right now, with the police, with Black Lives Matter, everything that's going on, we still need that insight. We still need that thought of inclusiveness. We still need to come together. And that's what I like about this film. It shows us coming together from Chicago, Milwaukee, Parkland, Florida, all the different places we went, Salt Lake City, everywhere, just bringing us together. That's what I feel like we still need to do. That's what I feel like the film does, bring people together. Because I would keep saying, if divided, we will fall. United, we stand. I take that quote with me every day, because I feel like it's true. We need to be together. United, we stand. Divided, we fall. I feel like as long as we're united, we can do anything.
I just wanted to say that I was really satisfied with the response that we got from the film. You know, there are so many undertones of hope amongst all of the tragedy and trauma that this particular group of kids have experienced. And ultimately, the goal with this film was to inspire people to want to create change and stand up for a cause that they believe in. And we also demonstrate on how to do that. And so, you know, and I think that's really important, because some people think that, you know, that they don't matter, that their voice doesn't matter, that they don't have the ability to stand up for a cause. Whereas, like, in this film is an example of a bunch of kids who were, you know, who been traumatized by gun violence. So, like, if we can do it, it's a template of basically saying you can do it too. And we really got that response from the film, and people were very inspired and felt that they were a part of this cause, that they could see themselves wanting to change something. And so even now, you know, amongst this pandemic where we're so socially isolated and we're not with each other, it's so hard to feel like there's a collective thought about anything, because there isn't that assembly. And I think this film is a way of bringing people together. This film is a call to action to want to see change and to endorse that change by people that you care about. And that's why, like, just as Alex was saying, that's why this film is really important right now, because I think, especially with this critical 2020 election coming up, and pretty much any election after that point, we need people to want to participate and engage with their communities and with the nation as a whole. So I feel like this film really gives people that spark, or that, you know, that that willingness to want to participate and to change the things they see around them, regardless of their circumstance, regardless of where they're from, or what they've experienced. Because really, at the end of the day, pain and trauma is like a common denominator for a lot of people. And I think that the tragedy alone is what should want to propel people forward. So.
As you mentioned, we have probably the most important election of our lives in, I believe, is 40 days. And I know this is a very important election for you all personally. And I wonder, how are you feeling about well, not the candidates, but the election in general, about the registration to vote? You think you got enough young people motivated? Are you still working on it? And also the film, is the film going to be, are you going to be able to share it on time for the election?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. We're about to announce a really exciting virtual launch the third week in October, that there will be a window. Will be, if you follow us at Us Kids Film on any of this Twitter and Instagram and other platforms, or our website, uskidsfilm.com, there'll be a virtual release of the film. We want to make the film available for a window for all people, especially kids across America, to see for free. And it is tied to call to action, in the sense that we'll be partnering with March for Our Lives and I believe When We All Vote and some of the other groups. And the idea, we had a long talk about it the other night too, is to become involved, to, in my mind, and I can only speak now for Kim, I think it's essential to vote. I think it's a civic duty. I think it's important to become informed. I think it's important. What I heard a lot from a lot of the people involved in the film was to vote for issues. Think about, to sort of get out of the partisan rhetoric of tribal partisan politics. And, it's about voting for issues that make you safer, or make the world a better place in your mind for you and in your families and your friends and your kids. And I think it's really important for young people to decide for themselves, to educate themselves about how important down ballot voting matters. Whatever they think, there are also calls to action that can be, that will be involved with, that have to do with maybe volunteering to work at the polls, or bringing elderly people to the polls, or people who have less access. So we do want to tie it in with voter registration. We feel strongly about that because, as Sam said, I think the film is a call to action, but I'm not, I'm very respectful of the youth movement, and they are thinking hard. They is a very monolithic thing, but I do observe that these generations, because there are several, we also want to really look very hard at new voters. It's a specific, first-time voters are a special group. There's a feeling of empowerment when you get to vote for the first time. But I'm very conscious of not telling young people what they should do or who they should vote for, but I do feel strongly about voting, and I'll let the others respond. But it's really about the film itself. I think what I'm hoping is to open a dialogue between that date, which will be somewhere around October 23, and November 3rd, and a forum. So just to end that, I really want, if people are are inspired, the biggest call to action for me is tell other people to see the film. And I say that it's for free that weekend. Tell everyone you know to see it. And that's how we're going to get traction with this. We want to sort of make it a phenomenon. There are, I will just say cryptically, there are definitely some forces out there that are reticent to have films that they feel are too political, which I don't see this film as political. I see it's a bunch of young patriots doing their duty in our country to make it better. But because of that, we want to make sure that everyone can see it. And that's really important we need the help for other people through social media to tell people to go and see it.
Great. Good. Sam, Alex, you want to follow that? Or I do actually have another question for you as well, regarding how hopeful the film is, as you, King, mentioned, and seeing this young generation doing what probably government should be doing. The film is doing what government probably should be doing. And I had the luck to be in Washington, D.C. for the March for Our Lives. And that was one of the most beautiful days I spent in that city that I lived for 10 years. And I just would like you to talk to us on how we adults and people looking at you as you are doing what we should be doing, what else can we do? And also to young people that are probably not ready to vote. We will be showing the film also as part of our education program at the festival, and we'll have a lot of middle and high school students. And how can we all get engaged in this, and especially after watching the film, and help you with your causes, everybody's cause?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the most important thing a person can do is, exercise their right of voting. And I know a lot of people can't do that, but, there is a way for people who don't have the ability to advocate for other people to vote, which is really important. Like Kim was saying earlier, there's the ability to help volunteer at the polls. And, if people don't have the accessibility of getting there, helping, carpooling or things like that. So voting obviously is definitely the number one, because it makes the most difference, especially collectively if people all have the same idea, and if that's being represented through our voting system, that's incredible. But it really doesn't need to always be voting. Activism and advocacy work can look like anything. Protest and rallying is really important, whether that's on social media or in person. When you're advocating for a movement, numbers matter, and having a large amount of people, whether that be on social media or, presently in person, that will cause a certain amount of traction and a certain amount of attention towards a cause, which is really important. Being aware and educated about your local and national government systems, and how your representatives within your state represent issues that you care about, and making sure that when you do vote or you do advocate for a certain party or a certain representative, that they are representing your issues and they have the receipts and the history to prove that. Advocacy can look like, it can look like art, it can look like music, like incorporating things like film or music or any of these things is a form of activism. So my number one recommendation is understand that activism has no limits, right? So it can start as, to the most legal and most professional way of exercising your right of voting, or, demonstrating it through, protest or art or anything. And so my recommendation is activism has no limits. There's no such thing as not enough or too much activism. And really, there's always a starting point. And I think that's definitely what I recommend to people who are trying to start or advocate for a cause, is just understanding that it's never too late.
Right.
I would just say I agree with both Kim and Sam. Especially, I would like to bring back up the starting point that Sam was just talking about. Yes, that would be my advice. My recommendation is just start. Find what stands out to you. Find what helps you get your point across. Everybody wants to see change, and in the best way possible. And I feel like Sam said, activism come in many ways, whether it's art, and that could be musically or visual art. But just find what makes you a better you. Find something that you don't like in your community. If there's something that you don't like, you have the power to change that. With numbers, picking back off Sam, because these were just great points. If you see something that you don't like in your community, find a group of people that feels the same way you do. And you discuss amongst yourself, how can you bring change? How can we how can we help this situation not be what we, I'm sorry, let me take it back. How can we change this situation? How can we make a better outcome for ourselves? And on the voting aspect, I would like to piggyback off what Kim was just saying. Vote on like issues. Vote for what's going to help you, what's going to help your community, not just the presidential elections. A lot of people need to understand that this is not the only election that matters. If you want to see change in your community, you have to vote in every election. You have to get the alderman you want, not just the president you want to pick. So, like I said, educate yourself, educate those around you, and choose your way of activism. It doesn't have to be being at every election, being at all the polls. You can, if you can't vote, educate. If you don't vote, if you got all the education you want, choose what helps you, whether it's art, where you can sing, poetry, music, drawing. It's so many different ways that, as Sam and Kim were both saying. But play your part. Don't just be a bystander. Do your part. Do your share.
Could I just add something to that about young people, because it is exciting to me that you'll be showing it to younger people. I've found that Alex and Sam and a lot of the others in the film, and you'll see younger people, have really come to serve as really exciting new role models for, so you see someone like Naomi Wadler, who stood up on the stage and said, it's only 7 short years till I too have the right to vote. And I think there's 2 things illustrated in the film. First is, I really think it's an intergenerational film. A lot of adults, parents or without kids, I think relate to the film and feel like, it's not about putting it all on them. Like, you guys just go, you're going to save the future. It's like standing with them respectfully, I would say, to adults. But for kids watching the film, it's about going home and having conversations, even if you're not old enough to vote yet. Having conversations maybe with your conservative parent or grandparent, and using those skills that we see used in the film that are so patient and civil about making your points. That happens in Texas with, guys who are wielding AR-15s, and David Hogg's able to make headway with just finding some common ground, some point of human connection. I think that's a really interesting, point in the film. And I would just encourage younger people to take a look at what these people were able to do in the midst of a lot of trauma. But I think it's really important to have intergenerational conversation, and it can come from the bottom up. It doesn't have to be, like parents telling kids, like, it should come the other way, of having conversation and mutual respect.
I kind of had this question for you, Kim, because I was wondering, you joined this incredibly group of smart, compassionate, highly motivated kids for all the time you were making the film. Was it intimidating for you to be surrounded by so much energy, and how obviously you felt very welcome, but how was that experience for you?
I would not use the word intimidating. I would use the word humbling sometimes. I learned a lot. And Sam, you'll see in the film, Sam's has an incredible voice, verbally, but also musically. And we and I share, I think we're both Bob Dylan fans. And I always think of the line of Bob Dylan, you're either busy being born or you're busy dying. And so this opportunity to spend time with people like Alex and Sam, as you get older, give you the feeling of being busy being born. And that's just everything to me, is as a human being in life, as a value system for me, the belief in being able to grow each day, to transform. And part of that is internal, and part of that is bringing that into the world. So I found it inspiring. Were there times that were, hard on the road? Of course, because the burnout that you see and the toll it takes on everybody, the toll it took on Sam to push through days of, so many days of just incredible internal hardship, and Alex too, and the toll of being on the road for a lot of the kids. I think I was never surprised. I was just sort of respectful of the amount of knowledge seeking, of learning they were doing along the way to make sure they knew their facts, to be able to argue correctly, or to be able to make their points heard, or to be resourceful and just trailblazers, really. Alex starting his own initiatives, Sam, amazing poet and spoken word artist. So there's all these things you don't even get in the film that I had the privilege of being able to have access to. So I felt, I don't have kids. And so I haven't spent time rearing kids and being around people of that age so much, in my Manhattan life. And it brought out that part of me. I was a rebellious kid in a lot of ways. And I think there's a lot of kinship, and people can, it's like anything, babies, dogs, young people, you can feel when there's respect there. You can feel when there's love. And that's kind of what I felt. And I'm also a big believer in really working against ageism. I think right now in our country, racism is like paramount, but I also think there's all kinds of divisions we have to fight against. And one of them is, like, for me, I always approached this as, Sam and Alex are individuals on this earth who've had less years on the earth, but they've also had different experiences that I can learn from. And hopefully through certain more years in experience, have certain experiences that they can learn from. And it's a mutual thing. I think where the generational push comes often into, becomes difficult is when there's a condescension or a lack of respect of that. And that's really what was born out of that march, was like, you're not hearing us, and we're not being heard, and we're not being respected. And, we're going to do something about it. So that's what I have to say about intergenerational interaction.
Great. And Alex and Sam, to finish, I think a lot of our audience, especially our young audience, is going to be very interested in knowing, what are you guys doing right now? Tell us a little bit of what you're studying, working.
Well, I just started college this fall. I'm not sure what I'm majoring in, though, so that is kind of up in the air. I'm currently a youth Congress member with March for Our Lives, so I've been doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work for their campaign they're doing. I'm also working alongside Kim with our Us Kids Impact campaign, which allows for conversations like this to happen that are super important. So that's something I've been doing. And I'm also hopefully moving to New York soon, so I can actually start going to school in person. So those are kind of what I've been doing.
Okay. With me, I'm in school now. I'm at Illinois Media School, studying broadcasting. I still do activism work, gather communities with Peace Warriors, one of the organizations that I've been working with since high school, and co-founder of Good Kids Mad City, another organization out in Chicago that's really located on the south side, but just helps bring community together, do things like food drives, donations, blanket, clothes, all that type of things. Just trying to help Chicago as much as I can, day by day, one day at a time.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure to share with you, to get your insights, and thank you, Kim, and for sharing this incredible film with us and the festival this year. We wish you the best of luck, and hopefully
Thank you. And I just want to give a shout out and thank you and everyone at Mill Valley. I'm an old fan. My first film I ever made had one of its best screenings ever at Mill Valley. It's a stellar festival that has been there for decades, and I really love you guys and what you do.
Thank you, Kim. We love you, and we can't wait to have you back one day in person, I'm sure.
Yeah, with the Redwoods.
Yes. Thank you so much. Bye.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.